Reviewing a book can seem like a daunting task. You need to summarize hundreds of pages into one concise piece, usually only 500 words long. I've written countless reviews and literary essays over the years with publications in genre fiction magazines and books. So in this video, I'll take you through the process of how I write a book review. But if there's one thing you take away from today, it's this. In the end, a book review is an essay that answers a single question. Why should you read or not read this book? Keeping that in the back of your mind, I'll take you through my process now. So the first part of my process is to take lots of notes while you read the book. I'll be highlighting passages in my Kindle or marking up pages with post-it notes and highlighters. But more than that, I take pages of notes in my reading journal. I write thoughts as they come to me, significant passages, notes on the themes, and overarching story. I also jot down points of confusion or frustration. They don't have to be full sentences. I mean, often I mark down fragmentary dot points, but these notes are vital for when I write my reviews, because by the time I start, I have a fairly good idea of what I'm going to say and how I'll structure it. Once you've done that, you've read the book, you've got your notes, it's important to structure your book review. And I have a basic structure for any review I keep in the back of my mind. So the first thing I do is an introduction, then the story summary, then after that an argument balancing positive and negative criticism, and finally the conclusion. So I'm going to break down each of those points step by step in this video. So the introduction should identify what book is being reviewed, the book's genre and where it sits in the wider market, the overall tone of the review, whether it's positive, negative, or middling, humorous or serious. After the introduction, I provide a short story summary, although I'm really careful to avoid spoilers. This is similar to a book blurb. It's enough story to provide context for the reader, but not so much that your review gets bogged down in descriptions. One of the biggest mistakes I see in book reviews is that people just describe what happens in the book. A book review is not a synopsis. You don't need to describe everything that happens. It's actually more analytical than that. You should always return to the key question. Why should you read or not read this book? From this brief story summary, I delve into what I like to call the argument. I treat a book review like an essay, arguing both sides of why you should or shouldn't read the book. There's no one way to structure the argument. For both fiction and non-fiction books, you should be asking yourself, is this book memorable or important, and why? How does this book engage with the wider world and current events? What makes this book unique? Where does this book sit compared to others in the genre? How could this book be improved? Does this book represent my lived experience well? Is the book accurate? How does the book make you feel? And who should read this book? Once I've answered those questions in my head, I'll look at how the sections could flow one into the other. From there, I structure the argument, often highlighting the positive aspects of the novel first, before delving into areas of criticism. It's important to remain balanced and fair. I talk about it like a feedback sandwich. You put your positive, your negative, and your conclusion together. I'm also a writer, and I'd really hate to get a purely negative review. And it's also why it's vital to provide specific examples to back up your argument. It's not enough to say, I didn't like it. You need to show why. For example, if a book includes poor representation of women, I might discuss a scene which illustrates that point, or how the female characters are portrayed, or the language with which they're described. And even if you know the author personally, a book review is not the place to launch into a personal attack on the writer. In fiction, you can't assume that the content of the story or the actions of the characters are the personal views of the author. Keep your criticism to the book and its contents. After you've structured that argument, you need to conclude it. Can't just fall over and finish. In the conclusion, you summarize your thoughts on the book and whether the reader should read it. This is not the place to be wishy-washy. People read reviews to know if they should read it themselves. And the last thing you want a reader to go away with is uncertainty. Often I'll recommend a book to certain audiences. If you're a fan of this author or this book, you'll like this one. This is also where I would include lines I think would make a great quotes on a book cover. You should be firm and declarative. Your opinion matters here. Now that's really how you structure a book review, but there's a few more tips I do want to share with you that are important to writing a book review. One of the most important things I do is to write the review soon after finishing the book, especially if you feel really passionate about it. Then you can let the words settle for a few days before editing the review. But at least you have your draft down while the iron is hot. The second tip is to read widely in the genre that you review. Ignorance here is not bliss. In the age of the internet, people will tell you if you've got something wrong. Reading widely in the genre you review is essential. You can see this kind of bias when literary magazines review speculative fiction, when it's clear they haven't read widely enough in the genre to understand where a work sits. The more you know, the richer your reviews will be. Next tip is to remember your audience. Book reviews are for readers first, so you need to answer the question whether the book delivers on the promise to the reader. For example, a holiday thriller might not be the next 1984, but if it does exactly what it says on the packet, I'd review it in a positive way. Likewise, a book on economic theory might not be interesting to romance readers, but if you were writing for a financial magazine, they'd be much more interested in the in-depth analysis of whether it's accurate and worth reading. It's also important to be culturally sensitive. I review a lot of work in translation, especially from Asia. It helps that I've lived in South Korea and have traveled widely throughout Asia. Even more than that, I have a grand passion for Asian literature. But there are times I can recognize that I might not understand a cultural practice outside of my experience. Before writing a review, I'll do research on the things I haven't understood to make sure I haven't missed something. It's also important to recognize when you don't have the cultural experience to understand something. You might actually not be the intended audience for the book, and it's okay to say this in your review. This goes without saying, but spell check, spell check, spell check, especially for book reviews. Triple check you've spelled the author's name, publisher, and book title correctly, because if you get that wrong, it's just embarrassing. Another tip I have is that once you get established as a book reviewer, you might get free advanced reader copies or ARCs. But this doesn't equal a positive review. Just because you get the book for free doesn't mean you have to review the book positively. There have been plenty of books that I've got or been offered and I've given an honest review. Many people leave a disclaimer like, I received a copy of this book from the publisher in exchange for an honest review, and put it front and center on your review itself. If there's nothing positive you can say about a book, it's also okay to write back to the publisher and say, this is not for me. I've done this before when I could clearly tell that this book was written for someone else, and I wouldn't be able to write a good review of it. Finally, be bold in expressing your opinion. Don't be afraid to say what you think. Draw from your unique experiences to write about books. There's been times when I've drawn from my career as a photographer to critique the depiction of photographers in a novel. Be bold in writing your review, always backing up your claims with evidence and thoughtful assessments. And always remember to answer the one question: why should you read or not read this book? I hope these tips have helped you to learn how to write a book review. If you have questions, ask away in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. I'm Kat Clay. I'm a writer, a critic, a reviewer. If you like to hear my reviews and more advice on how to be a successful writer, then please do hit subscribe. And thanks so much for watching.